Hi, this is Shane Feldman, founder and CEO at Count Me In, the largest millennial-led movement in the world. And we're going to talk today about why you are not operating at your top leadership capacity and how you can increase that capacity by first focusing on yourself as a community builder. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm the founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything. You can find out more about us at FullMontyLeadership.com. So let me ask you, in what ways do you need to up-level your leadership? You know, by all accounts, we are certainly in the first world, what is often referred to as a mental health crisis. It's not just the people who are living below the poverty line in the first world, but actually it's true at the highest levels. There's more depression, more anxiety, and more isolation, and it's impacting your leadership. Now, remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes in our Facebook and LinkedIn groups by looking for Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in, about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you tune into podcasts, and we always need your help in staying relevant. So please get over there, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday. You can also look for us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show. We're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also catch us on Google Home or Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron Podcast. Again, I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, an entrepreneur, a leader in any capacity, you know that as we get busier and busier, we're struggling to reach higher and higher and higher goals. And many of the folks who we look at on Facebook or Instagram, you know, their life looks amazing and they look so successful. But so many of those people, surprisingly, are deeply lonely. Now, the question I have for you is, as a leader, what can you do about it? And why should you even care? Well, let's find out together. Our guest on this episode is Shane Feldman. Now, he is the founder and CEO of Count Me In. Shane Feldman is a visionary behind the world's largest millennial-led movement. Over the past decade, Count Me In has initiated tens of thousands of projects worldwide, contributing a value of over, wait for this, $2.6 billion to global economy through services. Shane has been featured on Larry King, Dr. Oz, Forbes, People Magazine, and his documentary TV series for A&E follows his community building work. Shane has spoken to audiences around the world. In fact, he is about to go off to South Africa. He's been in South America. He's all over the place. Like he said, 5 continents in 5 weeks, I think he said. He's been recognized by the White House, the United Nations, and for his achievements in community leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome the founder of the largest millennial community in the world, Mr. Shane Feldman! Shane, good to have you here, mate.
Oh, such a pleasure and joy to be here with you, Dov.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, mate. I loved our previous conversation, and I'm very excited to have people learn more about you and the amazing work that you're doing. But before we do that, we're going to jump into a place that is my starting point that I like to ask. In a world where we are constantly influenced by the quote influencers. Oftentimes the people who've had the most influence on us are people that most other people don't know about or maybe wouldn't suspect. Who is someone that, again, we might likely not know or suspect, who has had a major influence on your life?
I mean, one of the greatest influences on my life is actually someone who I didn't actually realize was impacting me throughout my entire life in the way that they were. It's actually my youngest sister. Um,
Oh,
yeah, it's really interesting. It's been more of a newer revelation for me over the last couple of years. She is finishing up high school. She's just in 12th grade right now. And she is someone that has been able to kind of keep me human along the way, make fun of me in all the right ways. But also, she has this level of maturity and intelligence that really pushes me to think about things differently and bigger. And I just think there's this calm reverence in her. And I think it comes from being just naive enough as 12th grader or a 17-year-old, where you still see enough goodness in the world naturally, but you're still starting to wake up to some of the problems, challenges, and opportunities that surround us. So there's just this wonderful balance I'm seeing in my teenage sister that is pushing me to brand new limits and helping me see the world in a new way. So yeah, my sister Jordan has almost become a mentor to me.
that is so awesome.
Yeah.
Again, it's always, I find constantly, it's these people that most people wouldn't know about. I mean, you wouldn't know to say that to you. I know you were influenced by some other great leaders like Adam Braun and people like that. But, to talk about people who are in direct impact to us that, again, nobody would know about. And,
Sure.
you talked about something there that I find particularly endearing and fascinating for me, and that is naivete. And I talk about that differently, and I make a very clear distinction of it in my presentations about naivete versus being naive. Being naive is I'm ignorant and I just don't know. But naivete is this wonderful childlike presence that is wide open and willing to see the good in the world.
Right.
And for that reason is willing to ask questions that other people would discipline themselves not to ask because they don't want to look stupid. But when you do it with naivete, that it's such beautiful innocence. There's no stupidity in it. It's just beautiful, and it opens and it makes us, the people who are a little older or a little more, maybe even a little more worn, look at it and go, oh, I never thought about it that way. Thank you for asking me.
Well, sure. And it's almost like vulnerability without even knowing you're being vulnerable in the first place. It's so
Exactly.
natural when you're young. Whereas, as you grow up, whether you physically work in a cubicle or not, we very much work and live and operate in this cubicalized culture, particularly in Western civilization and North America. Everything is so individualized. So it's really uncommon that we're going to kind of enter that territory. But when you're a kid, when you're a teenager, you live in that territory, and it's wonderful. And like you said, I mean, there's so many other people that I look up to that I've learned from that you do know, right? From
Of
Adam
course.
Braun to Oprah, Brennan Burchard, all these wonderful people, Brene Brown. But I think there are the sleepers in our lives, often people that we see more regularly in real life, offline, that are really having the most profound impact on us. And sometimes we're not even aware that impact is happening until we really stop and meditate and realize, hey, that person's actually the reason that I think that way or do that thing.
Well, as you
Or
said,
make
it's a recent realization that your
sure of someone
younger
that I've
sister.
known for her entire life, right?
Right. That's pretty cool. That's amazing. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, because this is really your specialty, baby boomers and even Gen Xers have tried and, in my opinion, miserably failed to create this idea called work-life balance. And one of the things in my research for one of my books, Fiercely Loyal, was looking at what millennials really want. Millennials talk more about not work-life balance, but work-life blend. And I believe that leadership is at its roots relationship. And this is one of the reasons millennials want to have friends at work. They want to have best friend at work. I believe that, as I said, leadership is relationship, and the responsibility of relationship is to create a community. This has been your entire thing, this understanding of creating community. Talk to us about that work-life blend piece in the context of community, if you could, please.
Yeah, I mean, community is everything. I mean, sure, you say it's my thing. I think it's everyone's thing. We all crave it. We're
Hmm.
social beings. Sometimes we forget that we're social animals as humans, right?
Yep.
We need that connection with other people, physically, offline, in real life, whenever possible. And millennials in particular, I think, are really bringing this idea back to the surface today because here is a generation that is ready to speak out and say that they want to feel like they're making an impact. They want to feel like they're making a difference. They want to do something that is quote unquote meaningful.
Hmm.
The interesting thing is that there are so many companies out there that think that the answer is to, have a cause, a big CSR strategy, beanbag chairs, and that's going to solve the problem and attract and retain millennials when really what's beneath the surface there is a need for connection, a need for genuine connection and relationship, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And that's really more about, community building than beanbag chairs.
Yeah.
And the way that we get there is when we actually open up to those moments in between. It's not about the big causes, the big barbecues, those big projects that we're working on, but it's all the pauses. All the magic actually happens in those in between moments. It's walking on the way to your desk. It's what's happening in the first minute of that Zoom conference call, what's happening around the conversations on Slack, and how you're actually interacting and celebrating those kinds of interactions with one another. When we leverage those kinds of communications and actually see each other as fellow people that we're working together with, work suddenly becomes a lot more personal, as it should be, right? We're humans coming together to work with other humans. It is a very personal experience. And yet sometimes in this cubicalized culture, we kind of shove that to the side because it's not efficient, right? It's faster for us to just send that email saying exactly what we need, right? Please have a report on my desk by 3 p.m. instead of saying, hey, Dove, hope you had an excellent weekend. Would love to hear about your kid's first day of school. By the way, that report's due at 3 p.m. If you have any questions, my door is open, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it took an extra 20 seconds to write that email instead of just the one-liner, but you're now building an actual genuine relationship with that person. They're more likely to go above and beyond and feel more of a connection to the brand.
Yeah. I fully agree with you. And I was coaching a leader on this recently, and he's talking to me about, I just got to get stuff done and I've got to be efficient. And I said, I'm going to give you some guidance, and here's the guidance. And he's really talking to what you're saying. He said, what? I said, I want you to write that one-liner, the report needs to be on my desk by 3 o'clock, but I don't want you to send it. I want you to write that first so that's out of the way. When you've written the factual stuff you want done, then go right back to the top, hit return a couple of times and put a couple of spaces and write something personal. So, I do it on every email I do. Almost, if it's anything business, I'll put the business stuff first and then hit return twice, go back. I've got a space at something to go, hey, Shane, how you doing, mate? How was your travels? Did you have a great time? What was your favorite? Did you enjoy South America? Did you enjoy South Africa? Mm-hmm. What was it about those cultures that really fascinated you? And by the way, like you said, and that is like, oh, okay, yeah, I can get that done, but this person actually gives a crap.
Right.
And that's what we all crave, right?
And you just hit it right on the nose, because it's not enough just to write those extra lines. You really do have to care, right? If you're just putting it as fluff, you're putting it to, use it as a strategy. Like your care can't be a strategy.
No, exactly. Thank you for saying that.
So make sure that if you're asking a question, make sure it's a question you genuinely want to know the answer to, right? If you have no care in the world how their kid's first day to school was, because that's not relatable to you, you don't have kids, don't ask that question, right? Maybe you're more into travel. So ask them about what they did, on their vacation, right? Find the things that are actually going to be a connector between you and that employee, you and that colleague, you and that supervisor. And you don't need to be a supervisor or manager in order to implement this. It doesn't matter if you're a subordinate,
No.
You can start this connection from anywhere in the chain.
I'm working with a young executive right now. He's in his very early 20s. He's not 25 yet. And we were talking about this, and, he wants to be part of the culture inside of an organization. He wants to be part of the community, but he feels like, he is actually the youngest member of the team, but he's incredibly bright. And he's like, but people are talking to me about their kids. I can't relate to that, and they're talking to me about things like that. And I go, I understand that, but can you listen? Because you're listening with the intent to give an answer and create a solution. When you have to think about it for a moment, if a 40-year-old person is talking to you about a challenge with their children, they're not talking to you because they want advice. And he went, like it was like his mouth fell open. They're not talking to you, they're talking to you because they want community. They're talking to you because they want a connection. Now, you may not be able to give advice, and you can say, you know what, I really don't get that because I've never had a kid. I've had a niece and she's kind of cute, but I don't really have to deal with these issues. But then you can bring to something to the table that you do have in common. And I think that this is part of the challenge is we're looking saying, well, I don't fit into this box, so I can't go there. As opposed to, sometimes people don't want advice. They want to be, I think that, as men, we can all learn this very well. Our girlfriends, our wives, or our boyfriends for that matter, don't necessarily want advice or direction or being told what to want to do. They just want to know you actually give a shit enough to listen.
I think it's very rare that you actually actively seek advice as a person.
Exactly.
Sometimes, sure, it happens in our lives where we are actively looking for those coaches or going to someone we really trust to ask their opinion, ask for feedback. But I'd say 99% of the time, we just want to be heard. We just want to feel seen. And it's those moments of connection that matter most. So, think about your own life and how many times in the last month you've actually said something or shared something with the intention specifically of first and foremost receiving that person's feedback or advice. You probably can't think of more than maybe one time in the last month you've actually done that.
Yeah, it's very rare. You're absolutely right. So what we're coming down to here, which is the main focus of our subject, which is community. And, you did research by studying 20 countries to create about what creates community. Let's talk a little bit about how that happened, because we're going to address the elephant in the room, because, you're 64 years old and, that painting you've got in the attic of Dorian Gray. Right. So, I want to address that because, people are probably watching us and thinking, hold on a second, what's going on? Is it? So first of all, let's just get it out on the table. Tell us how old you are, because you and I discussed this before, because I want people to grasp how irrelevant it is. Because first time I saw a picture of you, I'm like, really? And then we had a conversation and I realized that, you are not only very knowledgeable about this, but you're very, very well researched. And I said you did 20 country research. So let's just get that elephant out of the way.
Sure. Well, I'm 25 years old. And to me, what's interesting is that a lot of people, I think, really start things off when they hit, around 25, their mid-20s, right? And
Absolutely.
I had a variety of circumstances and experiences early on that just kind of kickstarted things. So I started my organization. I started Count Me In as a project in high school. That was 11 years ago. So
So
it's
let's
been
just stop there for a minute, because I want people to actually hear that. It was 11 years ago.
11 years ago.
So you've been in this for 11 years. And when we think about somebody being in something for 11 years, we think, oh, they're in their mid-30s, right? But you were inspired in high school, and you and I had talked about also people from your part of the world who were young men who started the We movement, right? What's it called? We Day, right? Craig and Mark, who started We Day, and they were in there. I think it weren't even in high school when they started, and that's gone on to be an international movement. You've created something that's gone global again, and you started in high school. So the relevance, we older people, I'm counting myself in, tend to think of things being, well, after you leave university, so 18 plus 11 makes you 29 at the youngest, right? But you were inspired to do this in high school. That was a project. Talk to us a little bit about the lead in there.
The plan was just to really run an event for about 50 kids in my school at the time. The idea was, there are all these kids that are just kind of going through the motions, playing on their phones, going to classes and doing nothing else. What if we could, really inspire them to do something a little more entrepreneurial, start something meaningful, join projects, volunteer, just do something besides school. So that was the goal. Let's motivate 50 kids in the school to do something outside of classes, meaningful with their time. And as we were planning this event, it started to be this kind of by student, for student venture, and it ended up spreading online and attracting students from other schools. So we had 386 students show up at that first event from several different regions, people that were busing and driving in from hours away. And so I realized we were onto something, me and my friends that I gathered together to plan this event. So I realized we were kind of entering into territory that clearly we were filling a void that wasn't, we were attracting people were interested in this, and they were already asking when our next event was. So that was the pilot project that would become Count Me In. And when we fast forward 11 years, it has morphed and grown in so many beautiful ways. So Count Me In is now first and foremost a social entrepreneurship incubator. So our core focus is inspiring young people around the world to start or join meaningful grassroots ventures in their own local communities that support local causes. So it's very people, planet, sometimes profit. Some are nonprofit ventures, some are more social enterprises. But across the board, we now have 30,000 projects that we have inspired across 104 countries.
104 countries, 30,000.
30,000.
That is pretty inspiring, mate.
It's remarkable. It really is. And, I can take virtually no credit for it. I may have, been the one that started it all, but right now I spend most of my time on the road speaking and keynoting conferences. About 10% of my time is spent at Count Me In. And so I owe a lot to my team. We have a staff of 47 right now that run the day-to-day operations at Count Me In. And each of those 47 human beings are as inspiring and motivational and brilliant as I am, if not more so.
Mm-hmm. And you're still the CEO though, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I still hold the title and I still step into that seat once in a while, but I'm lucky to not only have a great team, but a remarkable COO, RX Jackson, who really has taken the reins over the last couple of years and allowed me to spend more time with clients and doing other work and researching. I am a researcher at heart. I am such a nerd dove, I can't even tell you. So like you mentioned before, I've actually researched on the ground now in 23 countries, interviewing people, kind of going into the trenches of what community building and community leadership looks like in other communities and cultures right across the globe.
So walk us through that. Walk us through some of your researching. Like, how do you go about that? Because I think that in many ways, I think community is misunderstood about what it actually is. And there is a lot of misconcepts there.
Well,
so
let's define it. Let's start by defining community.
That's what I want to do, yeah.
So I define community simply as a shared experience. A shared human experience. That is how I define community. That's how I see it. It is the starting point, right? Once we have community, then relationships can develop. Then we start to see retention thrive. We start to see attraction and empowerment of staff become natural. But it starts with that baseline of shared human experience. So for me, when I go into a country or culture, first of all, I'm particularly leaving North America because I find that in many ways we have things wrong and backwards in North American culture because of the amount of individualized work, the amount of cubicalized nature, the way that our school systems are run, just so many elements of the way that we live and work in North America is not very community oriented or community based. We've kind of strayed away from those natural roots, whereas in Eastern cultures, African cultures, Latin America, many other parts of the world, there is this very natural community building vibe that has just continued to spread throughout the workplace. Not to mention neighborhoods, communities, families. So I like to immerse myself in those communities. Sometimes it's urban centers, sometimes it's big cities, Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon in Vietnam, Shanghai, China, but often it's smaller villages or towns where I can really get to know locals and see what things are like on the periphery of the kind of busy day-to-day, perhaps more westernized epicenters. So that might look like, a rural village that I lived in for a couple weeks, a few hours from Accra in Ghana, West Africa, living with Zulu tribes in South Africa, on the coast near Durban. So, very, very unique places where you really get to see a whole different way of life, something that is entirely different from what you would see in New York or Toronto.
So what do you see? I mean, you talked about that we are, we're in first world countries, we're cubicalized, we're very isolated in many ways. I mean, we know that the research is showing that people are very lonely, and yet we are the most connected we've ever been, digitally, but the least connected emotionally than we've ever been. When you go to a place like Ho Chi Minh City, and I do have some friends who have spent a good amount of time there, or Shanghai, one of my clients lived there for 10 years. There's a very different sense, but in many ways, it seems like we are psychologically polluting that environment. What do you see there, Shane? I mean, are you seeing them striving to be like us?
Oh, well, let's start with Ho Chi Minh City because that's where my journey really started. That was
Right.
the first country that I ever
Mm-hmm.
went to. And my intention there wasn't to research. I wasn't kind of on this research journey yet. I was just looking to take a break from my life at home, looking to kind of explore somewhere new, somewhere I knew nothing about. So I went to Vietnam, and it was New Year's Eve the day I arrived in
Oh,
Vietnam.
really?
I was staying in the heart of Ho Chi Minh City. And
Yep.
so there's this main square a few blocks away from where I was staying where people were already starting to gather, thousands of people to celebrate New Year's. So I
And if
walked
you're there
over.
not on New Year's, it is insanely busy. Crossing the
Oh,
street, you take your life in your hands any day of the week. So on
yeah.
New Year's Eve, I cannot imagine. I've been there when it's not New Year's Eve
Oh,
and it's loony. So New Year's Eve, it must be.
I wonder if I can actually articulate because they have more motorbikes per capita than I think anywhere else in the world. But when I
And the
tell you
roads, the
on New
road
Year's,
signs, I have said the road signs are not actually signs; they're
suggestions,
suggestions.
yes, they are.
Suggestions. Like
And they're on
one-way street. Well, we're
sidewalks.
going to go the other way. It's
Didn't
just a
say they're on
suggestion.
sidewalks. They're just everywhere. They just absolutely
Exactly.
took over the city. It was absurd, but wonderful. I mean,
Yeah, it
definitely
is.
bit of culture shock, but it was excellent. So I was excited by all this: the motorbikes, the people, the music. There were fire dancers. It was just so much was going on that was so different. But I was alone. I was just having this experience on my own in this square. And there were a few, people in their probably 30s, early 30s, laughing and talking a few feet over to me in the square. And you know when you can tell that a group of people have started talking about you, even if it's not in your language,
Yes,
you have that
absolutely.
sense. So I knew like right away, okay, these people have started talking about me. I can see in my periphery, they're like looking over and glancing and pointing. Like, what's happening? They recognize me. Have they heard of Count Me In? Like, what's going on here? We've run some broadcasts in Asia. Like, I don't know what's happening. And then I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I turn to my right, and there's this woman in this beautiful red dress and matching lipstick. And she looks at me, and in broken English, she looks at me and points and simply asks if I'm alone.
Mhm.
And so I nodded my head yes. And this woman in the red dress smiles at me, and she shakes her head no. And she grabs my hand and pulls me into the group.
Oh,
And it changed my entire night. And so I was brave enough to take her hand and kind of join this group. We didn't speak the same language, spoke very little, but we spent hours together, me and this group of four other people, locals from Ho Chi Minh City. We danced together and laughed and ate all kinds of strange food, and literally spoke maybe 10 sentences the entire night. But it was remarkable. And what I learned later, which really kickstarted this whole research journey for me, was that in Vietnam, the reason this happened and the reason it's not an anomaly is because they value collectivism as a country. So the Vietnamese actually place a huge value in the power of groups, the power of community, and they see individuals as secondary to groups. So what that meant to me was that if that group, if that woman hadn't noticed me and welcomed me in, that just meant another group in that square would have noticed me and welcomed me into their group just as quickly, which is something that I don't think you would ever see in Times Square in New York City on New Year's, right? You're in your own bubble. It's not to be rude. It's not because we're not nice. It's just not natural, right? You're in your bubble, you're in your group, and you're not looking out to see who's alone. Plus, if you see someone on their own, that's probably someone you don't want to deal with, right? They're probably alone for a reason. Whereas somewhere like Vietnam is just natural. They're alone, let's welcome them. You're by the Western Wall on a Friday evening in Jerusalem, Israel, you're going to be invited to someone's house for dinner.
yes,
It's going
absolutely.
to happen. Right?
Yeah.
So, and you can see this happen time and time again in countries around the world where they really value that kind of community-based experience. And that was my first true recall of what I now call a plus one experience, which is what community is built on, right? So plus one experience is what life is meant to be. It's the difference between reading that amazing novel versus being in a book club. Binge watching all the Harry Potter movies on Netflix versus lining up at the theater for the midnight premiere dressed in costumes. It's why we spend hundreds of dollars on a ticket to see someone perform live in concert. right? Beyonce, Bruce Springsteen, it's better than listening to them alone in our headphones, right? Or on the radio in our car. We want that shared experience.
And I think that we in the digital world, we've forgotten that because, oftentimes, people will go to a concert and go, well, the music wasn't as good. It's not. There's a pretty good chance it's not. You've got a studio, you've got production, you've got all kinds of things that made it a lot better. I know I've been to a lot of concerts and I've heard a lot of singers and gone, good studio. There was a great producer in there, did great stuff. But as you said, there's this experience of being with, and it's being with people who can elevate you in a certain situation. It's not just being with. There's a wonderful movie, older movie that most people your age certainly probably wouldn't remember. Maybe you do, and it would be awesome if you do. And it was called Midnight Express. Ever heard of it?
I have heard of it, yes.
Okay, cool. A lot of people my age haven't heard of it, so it's not age. Right? But it was an amazing movie about a guy who gets busted for carrying hashish out of Turkey and ends up in a Turkish jail. Horrible situation. And he's completely, totally isolated until somebody befriends him and it becomes bearable. A situation that is unbearable is bearable in a community. And I think that's, and because it's so primal to us, it's so visceral and cellular, that if we don't feel like we're part of a community, we will leave. And this is true in epigenetics, and people don't realize how ingrained this is. In epigenetics, all of your cells must communicate with all of your cells. That's how it works. And if a cell does not communicate with another cell, the other cells literally push it out, it becomes a dead cell. That's how the body works.
Of course.
That's how we work.
Of course. And that's why we're neurologically wired to connect with one another, right? It all connects the same way. And this is prevalent in Hollywood because Hollywood is run by people who feel things and have emotions. It's not just Midnight Express. You think about, there's so many, Shawshank Redemption, another excellent example. That's someone that needs that sense of community and connection with others. And we're the same way. You don't need to be in dire circumstances to crave that kind of emotional connection with others at home, with your friends, with family, and at work, where most of us spend the majority of our time. Whether it's a physical office or a remote office, it doesn't matter. There's opportunity for that connection. And the more we celebrate it and prioritize it, the more you're going to find fulfillment, the more you're going to go to bed feeling happier. At the end of the day, wake up more excited to do your job, and get this, be more productive throughout the day.
So let's go there, Shane. Let's take it to that next level, which is, people watching, listening to us are saying, okay, I get it. Okay, I understand this. We all need community. What the hell's that got to do with me? I'm a leader. We got bottom line to meet. We've got targets to hit, goals to hit. I got to make sure my people are getting shit done.
Yeah. Well, you're answering the question in the question. There, you want retention, you want engagement, you want to attract the most high-performing team in the world, you got to start with community. We're all talking about leadership. Very few people right now in the States, in North America, are talking and celebrating community, right? There is no leadership without community. We have to celebrate that as a starting point, and the rest will take care of itself. Right?
But I think you just said something that's vitally important that I want our leaders to get. You see, what we look at is we look at the pyramid and we go, leader, therefore community's down here. No. There is no leader if there is no community. It's that simple. And that's what I loved about, when you and I talked before, and I was like, that's why this is an important message, because leadership does not exist without community. It does, but it's you in the mirror having an ego time, like, oh, aren't I wonderful? But nobody cares, and you're not really leading anybody apart from the 50 people who are living in your head. And then we maybe need to get you a couple of medication. But leadership requires community first. So talk to us about that, because I want leaders to get that part.
Well, it's that mindset switch, right? When you realize what you just said, when you realize that the pyramid really only works in any capacity when you are inspiring your workers, your team, as the leader of a community, right? When you focus on that, when you focus on rewriting those emails in that way, sending that quick video message instead of the text, putting your phone in your pocket as you walk down the hallway so that you can actually look at people and smile and nod, right? Having profile pictures on Slack so people can actually see you when they interact. These are little tiny shifts, little hacks that actually have a profound impact. This is the starting point to start building that sense of actual connection so that people don't feel like they're just working for a company. They feel like they are coming together with other people for something they genuinely care about, for a cause that's meaningful, for a role that they feel grateful that they get to fill every single day. It's not just punching in and punching out. It's something that's more meaningful. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the physical function of their job or what the company even is. I don't care if you're pharmaceutical. I don't care if you're in tech. Genuinely, it does not matter. What matters is you celebrating every single person that is contributing to whatever the goal or mission is of your brand, your company.
Yeah.
When you are able to help everyone that works for you, everyone that works with you, feel a sense of value at that office or in that role, that's where retention's born, right?
Yes.
When someone feels a sense of value, when they feel that kind of recognition, that's huge. I was just talking yesterday. I was in Arizona speaking yesterday, and I met this executive chef, remarkable guy named Michael, really, really great guy. And he is in charge of the largest outdoor kitchens in the world. So the American Pavilion at the Olympics, that's his kitchen.
Wow.
So he typically leads teams, as executive chef. He leads teams of typically anywhere from 200 to 500 cooks in these outdoor kitchens that are built just for events. The U.S. Open, the American Pavilion at the Olympics, it's massive undertakings. And he has to attract and engage a ruthless team of expert cooks in the hundreds that he typically meets. And then they dive into work. They have a week of work and then they're done, right? And so I asked him what his secret was to actually engage and empower a team of cooks in that very unique niche environment in such a short period of time, because it's very unlike a typical office, right? And he said, it's easy. He said, all I have to do is share appreciation and give them all the credit. That's it. I said, what do you mean? He's like, I don't take any credit. Every single moment I interact with my cooks, they know that they are in charge of their station. They know that even if that cook's only job is to put that slice of cheese on the sandwich on the conveyor belt, he's going to know from me that he is putting the cheese on that piece of bread in the most expert way. It is going to be placed in the best way possible. It's going to be the best piece of cheese that's ever met a piece of bread. And he said just the way that he's able to celebrate each of his cooks and share appreciation is the reason that he's invited to their houses. Their wives want to cook for him, and they're constantly emailing asking for the next job, which is, if you're aware of the restaurant or cooking industry, it's very uncommon that you have that kind of relationship with a kitchen. So it starts with that kind of recognition. And if you think about it, like we were talking before, how many of us just want to feel seen, heard, and valued, right? That's what it's all about. And when you are sharing that kind of experience with your employees or your team, they're going to start seeing you in a whole new light. They're going to start, working with you in a way that they feel like you really are a leader who cares. You're not going to be a leader by title. You're going to be a leader by action. Mm-hmm. And what happens then when you talk about retention at that level? Well, then if something happens to the company and you're going somewhere else as a leader and you desperately want your COO or your assistant to come with you, there's no way they're not going to stay by your side because you've built a genuine connection with them.
I fully agree with everything you're saying. I believe without a shadow of doubt that, and talked about it in Fiercely Loyal, that community is vitally important. And in an organization, I think you've got three communities, and I'd love to hear your insight on this, Shane. I talk about the community that is your company, so all the people in there and how you build that community. The second community is, if you are a physical company, the community that you are planted in and how you impact and interact with. And thirdly, there's a community of your industry. So the industry and how you impact and interact with them. And I've said in the book, I talked about how if you work on building these three communities where people are actually seen, heard, valued, and appreciated, and subjectively appreciated. So not just here's a ticket to the game because I don't like football, so I'm not appreciated because I don't like football, right? But seen, heard, valued, recognized, appreciated inside of the company, inside of, wherever it is, Mississauga or wherever it likely might be your plant is, or your physical position is, and the industry. As a member of the XYZ industry, this is how we value that industry, and here's what we do to lift that up. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, if you are walking in with that mindset, then you're going to be increasing the capacity of an entire organization. When you have those three different communities, as you put it, working harmoniously together, that's when we think about brands that are dominating, brands that are more like movements, brands that don't just have customers, they have raving fans. Mm-hmm. Those are brands that are celebrating community inside and out, like you just put
Absolutely.
it. And I think genuinely there's much more than three. I think there's infinite number of communities that we're building and that we can be a part of if we so choose. And once we open our mind to it, once we're open to that concept, you start to realize it's much more easier than you think. It really is just micro shifts that lead to these macro results. I traveled the world, 23 different countries, trying to find the most innovative examples of community. I searched everywhere. And what it took me 23 countries to realize was that community isn't found. Community is created.
Yes.
And we all have the same opportunity to create it. For some, it's easier than others. In North America, it's a bit more of a struggle, but we're getting there. And I see it in my clients. I see it after I speak. I see them start to make the little shifts, and I see it make a difference. Because when we make those shifts, it actually feels more natural. We actually feel more like ourselves. It feels more authentic. And we actually realize that we are getting to know people around us that we may have thought we knew, but really we didn't know much more than their name, maybe their spouse's name, maybe the fact that they have 2 kids. But that was really it. That's where it started and ended. And now when you start to build genuine relationships with people, it's a whole different social landscape, something that our brains need and crave. It's why we aimlessly scroll on Facebook or Instagram, because we want to feel that dopamine, we want to feel that connection, but that's just a simulation. It's not actually filling the void.
No.
So, our phones just simulate that connection. When we actually feel it in real life, it's something that's addictive in the best way, and something that we can, in a very healthy way, actually fulfill each and every day. And work is the simplest place to accomplish that, because we're surrounded by people anyways, whether you have a small team of 3 or whether you're working in a team of 30,000. There are people around you that you can connect with, people that have the opportunity, just like you do, to activate parts of you that you cannot activate on your own. I genuinely believe that every single one of us has leadership capacities and qualities within us that we don't even know exist yet. I don't care if you're already a CEO. You have qualities that can't exist, that can't come to the surface until you connect with others in a new, meaningful way. Because other people have the power to bring out those parts of yourself that you haven't even tapped into yet. So think about the capacity. If you're already a high-performing leader, think about how much further you have to go. It's exciting.
It is. Now, let's sort of poke the bear a little bit. I said that you're the founder of the largest millennial-led community in the world. You had an event, I think you said it was 8 million people tuned in from around the world. But in many ways, this is a digital platform. And therefore, aren't you the problem? Right? Because we're talking about this whole thing around being physically connected and making to eyeball to eyeball. And yet you have this massive digital platform that's even got a quote unquote Netflix part to it where people can, digitally watch. Talk to us about what seems like the contradiction. I know it's not because of our previous conversation, but I want people to grasp that, because they're like, oh, this guy's, this guy's the Leonardo DiCaprio of this. He's talking about saving the planet, flying around on his private
Oh,
jet.
please look at me. I'm 25 years old. I live on this stuff. I spent half of my life on a smartphone. So I think technology is great. Technology is awesome. We should celebrate it and use it as the tool that it is. The ticket is that we can't forget that without the genuine connection to one another offline, we start to lose the meaning. So it's about that balance. Technology is great, right? It gives us so many opportunities that we didn't have even 5 years ago, right? What's capable right now today, it continues to blow me away. Never mind our platform online. The other day, I received a text from my 85-year-old grandmother that included emojis and animated confetti. So if that doesn't tell you that anything is possible, anything is possible today. It's remarkable. And the interesting thing with our platform is that we're constantly, and we're not perfect, but we are working really hard to find new and creative ways to innovate the technology, to innovate the platform, to have the most genuine connection possible online. So I mentioned we have a staff of 47.
Yes.
A remarkable team of 47. We don't have a physical office. It's an entirely remote team, which is very common today. It's becoming more and more common. Even with large blue chip companies, you find that you have a significant quantity of workforce that's overseas or remote. So we live on Zoom and Slack. That's where the majority of our meetings and conferences take place. A lot of the work is done online virtually. So we have really hacked these systems to make it as personal as possible. Whenever there's someone presenting on Zoom, they know to look directly into the webcam, so they're making eye contact with the people who are watching. You can see all the other video cameras on. There's never an opportunity where you can call in by phone. You have to be on video. With Slack, we make sure that everyone has a profile photo and they write fun bios about themselves so that they're really portraying who they are as if they were kind of in an office environment. We have so many channels set up just for casual chat that have nothing to do and aren't allowed to be formal conversations about work. They have to just be play and fun because we celebrate that. So it's about really finding ways to create the connection, even if you can only come together for, we have 2 masterminds a year where we come together in person biannually. So other than that, it really is a digital world. And there are ways that we can manipulate the technology to work in our favor. Of course, it doesn't replace in-person connection, but I think it's just about pushing ourselves to take one baby step at a time. So if your default is email, what would it look like if instead of sending that email, you sent a handwritten card? Or if your default is text, what would it look like if you actually texted someone a short 1-minute video instead of just text? So there are little things that we can do to push ourselves closer and closer to that genuine connection if that in-person moment is not possible for you.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Shane. My team, all but one, are digital. There's 19 of us. So only one is here in my city with me. The rest are everywhere else. Most places I don't even know where they are. And it's fascinating to me how many of them don't want to put a picture, don't want to communicate in a direct way. And I am like Mr. Like, I will not triangulate. Do not tell me what you want me to tell somebody. If you want somebody to know somebody, you have to communicate directly. I will not create any triangles. It's the rule of my business, right? Because I teach people communication. But it's fascinating to me that in the digital world, a lot of people are like, yeah, but the reason I love being offline or love being remote is because I don't have to dress up for work. And my response is, you don't. I don't care if you get out of bed with your hair like a wet chicken. It's fine. I just want to see your eyes. And that's why all my meetings, people say to me, can I phone you? No. I don't do phone calls. What do you mean you don't do phone calls? You and I know because we had this before. I only do video calls. If I can't see you, we're not going to continue. And I'll say, well, it's okay. So, well, I'm in my car and I couldn't do it. That's okay. We'll set another day. Because I will not, I want to make sure I can see that person. Am I an old fart or is that, do you see that that's important?
I think there's definitely value in that. I like the eye contact. I think eye contact is very important. I think that there are other avenues and values to other elements too. So, for example, I really value the eye contact. I think that's powerful virtually. What we've been testing over the last year or so with our team is the value of movement. Because we have seen in the research now that there is a lot of power in changing your environment, in walking meetings. And so we've been
Yes.
working on remote walking meetings with our team. It's very hard to do that over video. So often we'll have phone calls, like me and my COO, for example. He'll be walking around in Sacramento. I'll be walking around in New York City, but we'll be on the phone, and we're each reaping the benefits and rewards of a walking meeting. We are stimulating our brains in different ways. We are more focused. We have more mental clarity. Plus, when you change your scenery, you actually spark new neural pathways in your brains, which help you solve problems on the fly. So even though we can't see each other's eyes, we are so much more mentally focused, and we just have this new problem-solving expertise in those walking meetings. So we're playing around with that. I think there are other creative things. I really think the important thing that I could definitely agree with you on that we should not default to is the quick text or quick email, right? The quick text or quick email might seem quick and efficient in the moment, but we got to slow down a bit if we actually want to get fast, right? If you actually want to be more efficient and effective, we have to prioritize our communication methods. We have to actually think about what we're saying, and we have to make sure that we're spending the extra 5, 10, 20 seconds, which we all have, to make it a little more personal, a little more meaningful, and to celebrate that +1 experience.
And the interesting thing about it is that the taking that extra few seconds to connect with a person in the way that they would want to connect. Because I don't know anybody who would disagree with me that so often the context, the tonality is lost in a text or an email. You just can't do it. There's no way to do it. And it is the nuance of language and the delivery of tonality and the cadence that is lost on a text. And you can add a bunch of emoticons and all the rest of it, but it still doesn't do the thing. And, you know, I can send somebody I know, not a friend, but a good acquaintance, an email that says, happy birthday. I can even send them a text that says happy birthday. But what I will do is just record a 20-second happy birthday to them. It doesn't take a long time. And the response I get from that is enormous compared to, you know, I mean, I had a guy the other day who wrote me back, he goes, that was the best thing about my birthday. He goes, for me to get a 20-second birthday message from you totally blew my mind, right? I was like, well, what did that take from me? Like maybe it took me 30 seconds.
And it stands out too, because it's not the norm. So if you want to stand out, if you want to differentiate, I mean, just yesterday, I get more DMs than I could possibly respond to on Instagram. And there was one that I saw yesterday that I got, and there was no text at all, but it was a 35-second voice note. Like, okay, I'm sitting on a plane, getting ready to take off. I have 35 seconds. I'm curious. This person looks interesting. And it was 25 seconds of acknowledging a specific post that it was very clear this person read, saying how it made an impact on them, how much they liked it. And the last 10 seconds was inviting me to be on their podcast. And I'm maybe select 15, 20 podcasts a year to be on. I won't do more than 1 or 2 a month. And this guy, I don't know, I think he just got started. I think he has maybe 5 listeners, but I responded right away. Thank you for the voice note. It made all the difference. I'd love to be on.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm the same. I was on a podcast about a month ago for a young girl. And by the way, I highly recommend that you go listen to this podcast. It's called Mentor Z. And it's a young lady who is 16 years old. I love young people who are energized. And she's mentoring people who are her age and younger. And she invited me on her podcast. You know, like you said, 12 listeners maybe or something. But the personal connection she reached out to me. She had clearly watched several of my videos. She had clearly read a couple of my articles. She spoke about them, and she said, I'm just getting started. I don't care. Like, I care about you. I don't care about your audience. It's fine. Let me show up and serve you because you made the effort to connect.
Right.
And this is really our message here today, isn't it, Shane? Our message here today is reach out and connect at a real human level, because community is built one relationship at a time by reaching out beyond what we got to get done.
You want to see your staff perform at higher levels. You want to inspire them to push further. Celebrate them, appreciate them, share your gratitude, build on those connections. The more you do that, the more they're going to want to reach above and beyond, the more they're going to have new capacity to reach above and beyond their current potential.
And if you think this doesn't matter, as I said in the intro, Shane has been recognized by the White House and the UN. Tell us quickly a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How did that happen?
I mean, yeah, both
Toronto
were
boy.
Interesting. Right, I know. I mean, the Prime Minister of Canada too. Yeah, the White House was interesting. I was doing a report on how to make volunteering more sexy. Was actually the report, and so serve.gov, which is the branch of the White House that deals with all community service initiatives across America, reached out. So that was for that report, which is interesting and niche and strange. Is something I wrote back when I was 16 years old. So that was a little while back, and then the UN. I was invited to represent Canada for the General Assembly. They had youth representing different countries from around the world, and I was invited to rep Canada.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty amazing.
Each opportunity is a new chance for me to not only gain new perspectives and learn, but also teach and share my own story. So I'm grateful. I mean, right now I'm in the midst of, like you said before, I'm 5 continents in 5 weeks. So it is just a crazy town season for me, but every flight is worth it. The 7 million hours in the air just means I have the opportunity to impact and support and help so many people increase their communication capacity and connect with others in a more effective and meaningful way. And to me, it's a great gift and privilege I have, and it's not lost on me. I don't take for granted the fact that I am this young 25-year-old, queer Canadian kid that gets to go out and share my story around the world. I'm grateful to do it.
Yeah, and I think that it's so awesome that you not only are doing this, but you recognize what it is that you're doing. I think it's just so important that you recognize what it is that you're doing, because it is something. I mean, I've talked about speaking for years. I teach people to speak, and I say, it looks very glamorous. And there are parts of it that are incredibly glamorous. But the truth of the matter is there's nothing glamorous about going through TSA for the 100th time this year. There's nothing glamorous about going, oh my God, I'm so damn hungry, and the only thing is this food that I would never eat. There's nothing glamorous about showing up at a hotel incredibly late at night, starving hungry, and there's no food. Or sleeping in a bed that's not your own and missing your partner or missing your loved ones.
But tell me, Deb, is there ever a day where you don't think, damn, it's all worth it?
Every day I think it's worth it, right? And that's the point. And so when you hear people like Gary Vee and people talk about the hustle, and I'm like, you know what? There's a part of me that doesn't believe in that at all, because here's the thing. I do the shit I don't want to do so I can do the shit I want to do, right? And the stuff I want to do is the stuff that has the impact. And that might be 10 or 20%. And it's the 80% I have to do to get to the 10 or 20% that makes it worth it every single time. Yep. And so, when I arrive in Iran to speak and I'm dog tired because I've had to fly in one direction, then the other direction, because you can't fly directly from North America, and I'm exhausted and I don't really want to do it. And then I stand on a stage in Iran in front of a bunch of people who are completely different culture, but amazing and wonderful people. And I go, yeah, this is what it's about. This is what, am I jet lagged? Oh yeah, right. Do
I know the day of the week? No. Have I eaten a meal in the last 48 hours? Absolutely not. Have I been off the stage? Oh, you bet I am.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's so important. Shane, this has been awesome, mate. I've had a wonderful time, and thank you so much for taking the time for putting us on your exclusive list of podcasts. Really appreciate it. Before we finish up, there are a couple of things. I'm going to ask you to let our audience know where they can find out more about you and your wonderful resources and how they can hire you to come in and speak or whatever it is. But before we do that, I would love for you to tell our audience, I always like to finish the show with, tell us a practical thing that you would love audience members to go away and do within preferably the next 24 hours, that will bring home what it is that you've been speaking about here and have them actually go, oh, I can see the benefit of this. What would that be?
I mean, walking meetings are a great one because I'm celebrating that right now, and it's great because it doesn't matter if you are in a conventional office or a remote one. You can have a walking meeting even on the phone, and I'm seeing personally the impact, and I'm starting to see it with my clients as well, not to mention my team. Another thing is meals. And maybe this is because I was in Japan last week and it is the best food I've ever had in my entire life. But I really do think there's something really special about the way that food can bring us together. And oftentimes I see my clients, particularly larger companies, and they have this mindset and this lifestyle of you just power through your lunch, you kind of eat on your own time, you do your own thing, you bring your food, you eat at your desk, and it is a completely wasted opportunity. When we stop for even 20 minutes and sit down as a team or as an office and eat together, it creates this shared experience, and it is transformative. It helps us actually stop and just be with one another for a short period of time and changes the entire environment, and you're going to have a far more motivated afternoon if you're stopping to actually sit down and have a meal with people. I learned this in France. I mean, Japan was the best food ever, but in France, they actually eat almost all meals together. And when I was walking around the city, I noticed no one was walking around eating or drinking anything. It was all about sitting down and savoring. And it's remarkable. And you see companies like Google that have started to implement this now. Google's a wonderful client of mine. And if you talk to any Googler, anyone that works at Google, they'll tell you that part of their job is eating with customers and colleagues and drinking coffee with people in the morning and never sitting on their own.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think that's really important. I believe in that in my life and in my business. So thank you, Shane. This has been awesome, mate. I've loved it. Please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you and all your wonderful resources.
Yes, please reach out and connect on whatever social medias you are on. I mean, I'd love to meet in person, obviously, but if you're on another part of the world, then please, social media is a place to at least start. So Instagram, Twitter, all those, just search Shane Feldman and you'll find me. And shanefeldman.com is where I live online digitally. And please reach out if there's any way that I can serve you or your organization.
And I really do encourage you to go look at shanefeldman.com. There's videos there. There's links to all kinds of great things. And as I said, Shane is also speaks around the world for organizations, for conferences, etc. He's a great speaker with a very powerful message. And I want to thank you, sir, because I'm inspired by you. As I said to you last time we spoke, at your age, I was a bit of a schmuck. And I'm grateful for anybody who's not a schmuck at that age, because it's inspiring, right? And I really believe that the world is changed by the people who are stepping up at any age, and I just love that. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for breaking the bias that exists around youth and around millennials. So thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure and honor.
Truly, likewise.
Thank you. And you can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes by going into our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. You can find them you can find us on both those platforms, just Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. If you're ready to develop the leadership and loyalty inside of your organization, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com. To find out how you can hire me, Darv Baron, as a speaker or strategist for your organization, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com/speaking, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Remember, you can also get the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. Matrix like the movie, you don't need a triple W. matrix.fullmontyleadership.com and get your Matrix leadership self-assessment tool. Absolutely free there. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how leadership does not exist without community, and how you maybe need to focus in on community first so that you can become a better leader. I'm Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.